Hey guys, Palsteron here, and GGG just released a big teaser in the form of a new unique that they're going to release. Chris Wilson said that the new uniques are going to be absolutely outstanding because they understand that we want more hype things to chase after, and this one 100% delivers. Now, there's already a lot of discussion going on, and this just came out 1 hour before me recording this video, but I just wanted to give my initial thoughts as somebody who loves to tinker a lot with this passive tree here. The kind of combination that I always thought about, because I always thought about having more annoyance, right? In Blight, they released new uniques that could have extra annoyance, but I never thought about having 4 annoyance. So let's go over some of the very interesting, I guess, pathways that open up when wearing this amulet. All right, so going over this, I think there are 3 overarching reasons why I think this amulet is really interesting, and why having 4 annoyance instead of 1 can kind of give you a new perspective on a build. It can probably even spawn new builds, but let's go into the reasons. Number 1, pathing issues. And this is something I want to spell out right now, is I think that daggers will definitely profit from this unique quite a bit, because if we think about a normal dagger build, and I'm completely oversimplifying here, let's be real, right? But if we talk about a fist scaling dagger build, right, as it would be in the book, if we look at the dagger nodes here, they're completely out of place. So if we path down here, now let's say we go here to grab the Revenge the Hunted, and maybe we even grab the Jewel, right? We could also path here, so let's just take that for a second. But the problem is, if we do that, we cannot take the life here, for example. So let's just path like someone normally would, or maybe like this. It doesn't really matter, but let's leave it like this for a second, right? So let's think about a normal dagger build. Now, they would really like to get from the shadows, backstabbing, flaying, and Night Stalker, and maybe also stabbing first, right? But they really can't, right? You really don't want to do this. Sure, you get to Written in Blood here, but you just spend 2 points. So you just watered down the efficiency of Written in Blood extremely and Night Stalker. Is it really worth? Probably not. So number 1 thing is you can kind of avoid pathing issues. So that would be the number 1. Second, how you're going to get up here. It's going to be really rough. You're going to have to spend extra points, and then you also have to take these extra points, which we're also going to talk about. But basically, flaying and backstabbing is really hard to get. And if you think about pathing for damage nodes, one of the problems is also very often at that point, you'd rather just go for Cluster Jewel, right? Just go for Cluster Jewel. If you have to path here, maybe, and then it's kind of awkward, right? From the shadows is awkward as well. So basically what this amulet can do is smooth out your passive tree. Especially when we're talking on the right side of the tree, a lot of your pathing can't really be those damage nodes. You have to get your life somewhere, otherwise you're going to be running around with 3.5k life. It is what it is on the right side of the tree. You can't really path here, but all of these specific weapon nodes, it can kind of make your pathing easier. So TLDR reason number 1 is this amulet allows you to not have to screw up your passive tree, just to go for 1 or 2 very important nodes in your build. And that's usually what the Anoint itself should do. But sometimes there's more than 1, and in that case, this amulet is going to come in premium. Reason number 2, avoiding shitty small nodes. So having to take these 2 points to get overcharged, kind of a no-go. Same with a lot of the curse clusters, right? Same with a lot of the armor clusters, for example, or evasion clusters. If you look at the small nodes, they're just really bad, but then you have a bomb of a notable here. And in those cases, you can just straight up save points, which in the age of cluster jewels is just kind of huge. Now, obviously, for if we're talking about stuff like life, you don't really save that much. Like, you'd want to take these life nodes anyways. I'm more talking about specific damage nodes, which could just be better translated into taking another large cluster, maybe even free up another medium cluster or 2. Basically, in the days of cluster jewels, really think about what you're actually taking. Now, obviously, if it's just 1 travel node, it's not that bad, right? If you're here, you might as well take Aspect of the Panther if it fits into the build. But if we're talking, for example, ambidexterity, right? These just aren't very good in today's day and age. And it might even be that you're here and you have to travel this Dex node as well. So there's just a lot of notables like that where the extra travel is not really worth it, but the node itself would be really good if you didn't have to take so many mediocre nodes before it. And number 3, which is why this amulet might actually be build enabling, is you can negate certain downsides that builds would normally have. Some downsides that are so huge that you simply cannot run them efficiently. And number 1 that comes to mind here is the problem with the right side of the tree when it comes to defenses. So this is a discussion that has gone mainstream recently again because of the removal of acro, phase acro, because these 5 points here kind of had a huge impact on how the right side could it was kind of a band-aid for the right side of the tree. Because if you look at it just life-wise, I typed in here maximum life, you see that the right side just has a huge problem of actually getting enough life. These are terrible, right? This is out of the way. So all you're really looking at efficiently are these nodes, this. You can grab around 100% life, and then what? 100% life does probably not make most good builds, and a lot of and you know this, if you have been on the right side of the tree, you try to make a raider, very often what you have to do is, a ranger, sorry, is what you have to do on the right side of the tree is you actually have to path all the way here to Constitution just to get all of this life here. And this is a lot of traveling. Sure, you get the jewel along the way. Maybe you get another jewel here, but this is so much traveling. You don't get much payoff here. Maybe you can also do this to get a little bit more life. But overall, going here is just very, very inefficient. And this amulet could actually fix that, especially for rangers. And on the note of life, let's just go into the first example here, which is what I was just talking about, is negating the downside of having no life on the right side of the tree. Now, I know a lot of you guys are running around with your 3 to 4k life builds. It's all fine and dandy, but what if I could tell you that dying all the time maybe isn't necessary if you have enough damage? So there's a lot of builds out there that have a lot of investment and they still can't get much higher than 4 to 4.5k life, but at some point you have so much damage that you really have to ask yourself, maybe just investing into a little bit more life would be nice, which is what a lot of people are thinking, but they just have no option to do so, right? They are picking up the life that they can, but they get to like 100% life and they just can't afford to do this, right? A lot of builds just cannot afford to do this. So let's look at what, for example, this amulet here could do for a min-maxed bow build, for example. Well, this is the number 1 example here. On 4 notables, you can get 44% life, which is more than a Belly of the Beast body armor would give you, plus 50 flat life, which is already almost what you would get on an amulet life roll anyways, 1.6% life regen, for example, to negate blood rage, and 8% chaos res, I think also 10%, 10 strength, right, from up here. So let's go over which notables I took. Well, number 1, obviously, Constitution, and I think this one can't be talked about enough, because no matter what combination of maybe damage nodes you want to take on this amulet, Constitution is always the best life node on the tree, I would argue, and 14% life and 20 max life is always a consideration if you are a life build. Now that's 14 of these, and then we have 3 more nodes that have 10% life each. Obviously, number 1, Golem's Blood, 10% max life, 1.6 regen. Now, also Discipline and Training. Now, you can see here the 20 max life from here and 30 life from here. The right side of the tree very often has a problem getting flat life unless it can actually run a Chaos. And the problem with modern bow builds is that you have to run 2 6-links mostly, since the damage just isn't there anymore against single targets. So getting the flat life is extremely important here if you're not on the left side of the tree. So we get 20 from here, 30 from here, and last but not least, also Purity of Flesh. No, the strength was removed, don't worry. So this is actually exactly correct. So this is, for example, something you could do in a build that you already have min-maxed, you have enough damage. You're like, okay, I can sacrifice my amulet slot to get insanely tankier. So we're talking about like Chaos level of tankiness on an amulet. Number 2, staves. Now, first up, let's go over how a usual staff build would path, right? You go up here, you'll go here, you'll go here. You can take this pretty easily. You go here anyways. So all of these are basically easy to take, but maybe you even take this because you need the int and it's a jewel, so why not, right? And now you're here, right? And here we have the number 1 problem. So this node here, Serpent Stance, 40 crit, 30 crit multi, 5 block is insane. This here, 1 with the river, if you're Ellie based, insane. Blunt Trauma, insane. These 3 points are insane, but you would have to path up here, and there's not much else. Sure, you can take like Purity of Flesh. Maybe you can shore up a little bit more of your int, but not having to path up here is just a huge opportunity for a lot of these builds to go more into the dexterity region where they would rather go, but they really can't because these nodes are just too nutty, and this amulet basically means that you can anoint 4 things. So what can you do, for example? Well, you can go 1, 2, 3, and then you can do either Constitution or, for example, something that's also really awkward because you would have to path here and take these a little bit worse nodes, right? You can also go Steel Withstands. With how armor got reworked, you get 6% block, 30% damage, 20% increased armor. This node is just pretty nutty for probably most 3.16 builds. So staves have it really, really good. But let's look at some of the other examples. For example, what about axes, right? Feller of Foes has been something that has been anointed by a lot of axe builds that also go crit, right? But Hatchet Master is also really, really good. So you have 1, 2 already that are completely somewhere you don't want to path as most axe builds. If you go Impale, you can also get Harvester of Foes without having weird pathing, having to weirdly path up here, right? You can go Splitting Strikes. Now, this is usually in a better region, so you don't have to. But what you can also do is you can skip all those pathing nodes here and just take Slaughter straight up, kind of saving you points for maybe your Cluster Jewel or to invest into more life. Now, next up, Wand builds. Now, wands have an incredibly awkward time to path up here. Sure, if you're in-stacking, right, you're already going to be here, so it's just 1 point. But otherwise, it's like 2 points, which can kind of really scuff your build because then you're up here, but you also want to go here. So these points are kind of wasted. It's not like you want anything else up here. So you also want to go here and take Wandslinger and then just continue your journey, right? So being able to, for example, anoint Fusillade plus Disintegration plus Elder Power and then maybe taking either Constitution or if you're Energy Shield, something like Foresight on top of that could be really, really huge. Now, on the right side of the tree, we also have something really interesting. Let's say you're like a dual wield build and you're Paradoxica and Savior here, right? Paradoxica, Savior, and you kind of want to dual wield. You have a very weird decision to make because if you go to the right side of the tree, especially now with phase Acro being phased out, there's not that much reason to go there at all. Maybe you're already starting as duelist, so pathing here is really weird anyways, right? You don't even want to go here at all. There's just not much to gain, right? So you have this incredible combo of Twin Terrors plus Honed Edge plus these two, Fatal Blade, Insane, and then also Brutal Blade to rule it all out. You can also go, instead of Brutal Blade, if you don't care about block, you can also go for Constitution. But I think for dual wield builds, this is also very, very strong, especially since these nodes before Twin Terrors are really, really weak. And then we have something that is really, really interesting, which I can't say right now how crazy it's going to be, but it might just be insane, which is I want to remind you of the manifesto number 2, where they talk about defenses, where they kind of talk about a problem that they have. Characters who rely solely on armor are not protected against elemental damage. And this little line here, their solution is to add more maximum LE res to areas of the passive tree that have armor in them. So basically what they're talking about is giving most of the armor clusters here the Soul of Steel treatment, which Soul of Steel gives you +1 all maximum resistances, which if you even stacking armor remotely makes this already a very, very good anoint. But they want to give that to more armor nodes overall because elemental damage is a huge downside of armor. You're stacking armor, you're taking reduced physical damage, right? But where's the elemental damage reduction? Well, they want to compensate that. Maybe they put +1 max res on Inexorable. Maybe they put, probably not there, let's be real. Maybe +1 max res somewhere here, right? They want to basically give you more of that on the passive tree. But what if I told you that with this amulet, you might just not have to take all those pesky armor nodes before them and just anoint 4 times +1 maximum LE res. So that would look pretty crazy. Like imagine a amulet that straight up gives you 4 additional maximum LE res. Even if you want the armor, that's even crazier. On top of that, you could stack with 4 armor notables, probably over 100% increased armor on top. Maybe some weird interactions like gaining extra endurance charges, gaining extra regen, right? Maybe some extra life. But basically just think about how crazy that would be, actually being able to get 4 of those notables and getting a total of +4 max res on your Emmy, which I don't know how this is going to work out, right? I don't know what they mean with they're giving more options, but it sure sounds like a very interesting idea to me. Then let's talk about something really, really interesting with this amulet, which is going to be Pathfinder. So as you can see, there is a lot of different Flask nodes spread across the tree, right? A lot of them very, very strong. A lot of the small nodes before, not as impactful, so you wouldn't usually want to take it. It's a lot of point investment, but this amulet could actually make it work for you as a Pathfinder to get all the Flask effect, for example, to give your Dying Sun an additional projectile, or just get a ton of movement speed, a ton of defenses, a ton of like evasion, armor, whatever you want. With Pathfinder, basically, the world is your oyster, but let's go over them. Now, in order to get ourselves into a mind of a Pathfinder, right, we know where we start, so we can actually make an educated guess how this amulet would maybe look like on a Pathfinder, because Druidic Rite and Primal Spirit, let's be real, pretty easy to get. This one might be a little bit of a nuisance. You have to path down here. You have to do Flask effect duration, which is whatever, right? Duration is whatever. You're mainly looking for Flask effect, and that's what the Natural Remedies has. So you can skip like 3 points by anointing this, for example, which would be absolutely huge. You also don't have to path up here to get Profane Chemistry and Arcane Chemistry, and also something huge is Careful Conservationist. And even if you go here, you take this, you can do Conservationist plus Natural Remedies, and then also take this one here, because this is also a huge one, Aqueous Accelerant, for a total of 3, and then you can basically do whatever. You can go Constitution, but since you're already here, probably not. You can grab an extra curse. You can grab, for example, Overcharged. What I'm saying is that this is one of the best solutions to actually grab all the Flask effect on the passive tree, which for some setups can be very, very interesting and can open up some new builds altogether. Now, one of the most interesting things out of this is that you're actually going to be able to combine Anoint-Only-Notables. And that's, for example, Tranquility, which gives you Transfiguration of Soul. It gives you increased damage per increased maximum energy shield you have. So basically, if you look at Crown of the Inward Eye here, right, this has Transfiguration of Soul, Body, and Mind, which gives you increased damage per energy shield, mana, or life, respectively, right? But you never really could combine them other than with the helmet. Well, with this amulet, you can. You can make your amulet basically your new Crown of the Inward Eye, and even add a 4th new anointable. So there's a lot of these floating around here. Let's go through some of them. So besides just Tranquility, which gives you Transfiguration of Soul, Crusader, which gives you Transfiguration of Mind, also note that these give you increased max mana, energy shield, and also life down here with Tenacity, Transfiguration of Body. These are the ones on the Crown of the Inward Eye. There's also some other interesting ones. Let's for example, let's talk about Cleansed Thoughts. Let's say you're max Chaos Rest stacking and you want to get to like 90 Chaos Rest. Chaos Rest is doubled. Basically means that you get, if you're on 45 res, you're now going to be capped. So you get an extra 45 Chaos Rest for one Anoint. For example, that's really, really interesting. Also, something we saw a lot of last league was Vengeant Cascade. Now, taking this usually locked you out of other annoyance. Now it doesn't anymore. You can actually combine this with other ones. There's some less interesting ones. Chance to avoid physical damage from hits can be interesting. There's some weird things people are doing with Fortify, where they're basically low life, and as long as their life flask is up, they get Fortify, which is pretty cool, although this might get reworked with Fortify. I'm just trying to point you out that, or like all of these, right? These, you can have this for Strength, for Int, or for Dex, right? There's a lot of these anointables that you could never combine, so maybe you can think something up, but I think it's really, really interesting that you can actually now combine them and maybe even build your own Crown of the Inward Eye. Now, at the end of the video, I want to kind of give you some one-off notables, meaning that maybe in some builds, this amulet will not really allow you anything, but maybe you found it. I don't know how rare this is going to be, and maybe you're going to have, maybe this is your best in slot, right? Maybe you do the calculations and there's 4 nodes that would give you way better outcome than any rare could, and I just want to go over some just generically really, really good notables for most builds. First up, Whispers of Doom. This is pretty much a no-brainer. Being able to apply an additional curse, you don't have to be a curse stacker or anything to make use of that. It can often mean in the fire build, you can not only run flammability, you can also run ally weakness, or in a damage over time build, you can run temp chains and despair, or despairs and vulnerability, right? Stuff like that. This is usually really, really good. Number 2, if you can't get here, Constitution is just huge amount of increased life, and for most builds, just kind of a no-brainer. It frees up so much stuff on your gear, just straight up giving 20 life and 40 max life. And also charge-related stuff, for example, Disciple of the Slaughter, Disciple of the Unyielding, which are not only good for stackers, they also give you a little bit of increased damage, and they give you increased chance to gain that charge. So for example, if you put on Disciple of Unyielding, Disciple of Slaughter, and Disciple of the Forbidden, you can get a lot out of just the 3 base charges that you would have. But honestly, this all cumulates into Overcharge, which is, I think, going to be a really, really good node to take for most builds. A lot of builds are running Blood Rage, but not all of them actually want the degen. Degenning for 4% per second can be really annoying, especially if you're on like a dot or something like Burning Ground or Desecrated Ground. It might make you portal out of the map. It's just kind of annoying, let's be real, especially if you have like no regen whatsoever. So Overcharge kind of fixes that while also giving you power and endurance charges, which is usually really, really hard to get. Now, that being said, that also goes into the chance of actually combining, for example, all 3 max power charges if you're down in this region here. But the thing about stuff like that is like power charge stacking or frenzy charge stacking is usually you're running Badge of the Brotherhood. So it's going to be incredibly hard to actually be able to replace Badge of the Brotherhood with one of these amulets. It's the same slot, unfortunately. So I think for charge stackers, this will be kind of a no-no. But also something that is here is increased duration. So if we, for example, think about a Blade Vortex build, they really want their duration, but being here in the middle as a spellcaster, you really don't get much. Very often they would be like, I don't know, very often they would be like, let's say here, right? They would path through here. They probably wouldn't start here, but just bear with me, right? So for example, they would be here, and now they have to go down here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 6 points just to get this duration. Well, they can just do this and anoint the 25%. It's way better than the traveling nodes. Same here with exceptional performance. It's really annoying to get for Blade Vortex builds. So this might actually open up an interesting new avenue for Blade Vortex builds. They can get 50% skill effect duration and then maybe take like Constitution, extra Curse or something, convert to Cold, do LE weakness plus Frostbite, right? They can do stuff like that. I don't think this is going to be too crazy, but just something to keep in mind. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe. As always, big thank you to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do this without you, so thank you a lot for the support. I'm really, really excited by this amulet. It really gave me a new hope for the league. Them actually caring about uniques makes me very, very... It makes me look forward to the new league, right? Because they can say they care about uniques wherever they want. They already did a lot of the time, and then the uniques come out, like last league, they're ward-based, ward sucks, so all of them just straight up do nothing for us, right? It has happened before. Usually I'm not very hyped about uniques. All of these like teasers usually amount to nothing. They're just like 1 alch uniques. But this one is actually extremely interesting, and I would be seriously surprised if this didn't spawn a whole slew of new archetypes. Yeah, with that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.